Free agency is kicked off, and the Toronto Blue Jays have a lot of decisions to make. Who will stay? Who will go?
You are Locked On Blue Jays, your daily Toronto Blue Jays podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome back to Locked On Blue Jays, part of the Locked On Blue Jays podcast network. Now the number one sports podcast network, your team every day.
Today's episode brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code Locked On MLB for $20 off your first purchase. As you can tell, Carter's voice is gone, but he's battling through. We're gonna have a big conversation on free agency today. Who will stay, who will go, what are the positions of need for the Toronto Blue Jays, what their roster will look like right now. Also, a massive sports gambling announcement, not great for some players. We'll get into all that later on in the show. But, Carter, we got to start it here. This Toronto Blue Jays team, obviously, Shane Bieber will return for one more year. Bichette up in the air, and a couple other guys are in question of what's going to happen. I think me and you have a pretty good idea. But what's the Toronto Blue Jays roster look like right now?
Yeah, to start it off, I'm going to say I'm like Louis Varland if he pitched 3 times the amount he pitched in the playoffs. Maybe Yamamoto if he pitched the entire week rather than back-to-back days. Trying to power through it. It might be a little bit more of a Brayden-dominated episode, for better or worse for you guys, but I will power through nonetheless. So we're going to look at some of the free agents with the Toronto Blue Jays that may or may not return, and then also some positions of need as free agency does kick off. So I figured the best way to do this was to go over the roster right now. Again, this is before any move, and obviously Ross Atkins will be aggressive in the market. He will sign somebody. We don't know who it is necessarily, but there will be additions to this. So right now, if the roster was if we were rolling out into 2026 tomorrow, this is what the roster would look like. So Alejandro, Kirk at catcher, you have Tyler Heineman still there as well. Vladimir Guerrero Jr. at first base, Ernie Clement rocking second base, Andres Gimenez, the new shortstop, possibly of the Toronto Blue Jays. Maybe Bichette makes that a little bit more interesting. Addison Barger at third. You have Daulton, Varsho, Miles Straw at center field. Anthony Santander, and I have Joey Loperfido as a bench guy in right field. Nathan Lucas, David Schneider. David Schneider can play second base. He can play left field, so kind of that utility guy as well. And then your DH is George Springer. So offensively, there's not like a gaping need here. Like you could make this roster work. Again, you need some depth pieces. You definitely need some guys with a little bit more experience. Like, I don't know if I want to roll out Addison Barger every single day at third base. That's a decision that they will have to make as the offseason progresses and they get into spring training. That's one thing I would like to see is just have Addison Barger have a home, whether it's, it is the right field, it is third base. Let him get more comfortable at one specific position. But Brayden, is there anywhere in, at least on the batting order within the lineup, that you would want to add to this team?
Listen, I don't want to say that I'm expecting regression from some of these guys, but you have to. And to me, one of those candidates is Nathan Lucas and possibly Davis Schneider. Those are 2 big question marks for me of what they will bring into 2026. And I love Davis Schneider and I've loved Nathan Lucas, but I think we have to be somewhat realistic. And I think we saw what Davis Schneider can be. And that's a very good off the bench against lefties option that can hit righties as well, but maybe not an everyday guy. Nathan Lucas, to me, is candidate possibly number 1 for regression. He is there, and I don't necessarily know that I can rely on those guys in the field every day. So I would think that there's a possibility. I don't love Santander playing in the field, but that's where we're at because they want to keep George Springer's DH spot. And that's fine. And so will they make a move for an outfielder, or will Addison Barger become more of an outfielder than before? I think there's a lot of question marks right now because obviously we don't know what this team is going to do in free agency. And, the possibility of returning Bichette to this lineup would throw a big wrench into here as well. I mean, then you move Ernie to 3. So Ernie and Barger sort of split time. Barger plays some of the field, and they go back to what worked for them in 2025, which is having a lot of guys that can platoon in different spots. So I think that's a good option. But right now you can't bank on Bichette coming back as much as I want to, and I will be an advocate for. I can't sit here and say that he's going to be for sure. So maybe a fielder is definitely an option. But without having Bichette in this lineup as of right now, to me, yes, you hope Anthony Santander returns to form and you can put him in that 4 spot and that can be your 4-hole hitter. But I think at the end of the day, having somebody that puts good bat on ball like Bo Bichette there, but I don't know. Maybe that's somewhere that this team is going to have to look of finding just a very pure hitter to put in that 4 spot. Now, I don't know who that would necessarily be, and we'll take a deeper look into that as we get into free agency and start looking at more guys in particular. But Carter, there's not one glaring need. I picked that outfielder spot just because, yeah, you have to take into consideration some regression from a lot of these guys. I mean, you could say the same thing about Ernie Clement and Addison Barger as well. So yeah, it's an interesting conversation to be having right now. But as where this team stands, this is the hand we're dealt as of right now. So you have to sort of try to adjust lineups and make the best out of what you can. And I think that's what we put together here, Carter.
Yeah, the front office is going to try to predict who is going to regress, and there might be some better candidates than others. But honestly, it doesn't really matter who regresses. It's baseball. It's very tough to predict. There's going to be someone on the Toronto Blue Jays that does not perform as good as they did in 2025. And right now, I love Ernie Clement, and I don't think he's going to regress. I think he's going to be how he was in the regular season. I think that's who Ernie Clement is. But I think people are starting to have this unfair expectation of Ernie Clement. I get it because he set the single postseason record in hits, and he was phenomenal all postseason long. And again, a lot of people who didn't necessarily watch every single game in the regular season watched a lot of the playoffs, and Ernie Clement was phenomenal. You can't necessarily expect Ernie Clement to do that over a full 162. But on the other side of things, Anthony Santander was non-existent this entire season. And people are writing him off, not to like the Bo Bichette caliber, but they're saying, oh, trade this guy, release him. Like, don't even have him in the starting lineup, which makes zero sense. He averages 28 plus or just over 28 home runs over the last 3 years. Like, this is a guy that can hit for power. This is a guy that has hit for power. I mean, he hit 44 home runs the year that we signed him, and then just dealt with some injuries, dealt with, again, just some tough at-bats, some tough things that didn't necessarily go his way. So there's on the other side of the fence, there's some candidates that could have a better seasons. Vladimir Guerrero Jr. had an unbelievable playoff, but when you look at the regular season, probably expected a little bit more from Vladdy as well. And obviously, when we talk about positions in need, it's going to be a huge determining factor if they do sign Bo Bichette. If you don't have Bo Bichette back in this lineup, I probably want another power bat. I probably want another bat that can hit number 2, number 3, number 4, somewhere in that middle to the top of the order. So as this offseason progresses, the Blue Jays are going to be in on Bo Bichette, and we'll continue to get into that in the second segment. But you're right. Like, you need depth at every single position, especially on the pitching side, as we'll get to. But even for these positional players, Nathan Lucas has been good with the opportunity that he's gotten. Ernie Clement has been good with the opportunity that he's gotten. And John Schneider, if he continues to just set these guys up for success, you're going to need that platoon role. Like Nathan Lucas, you don't really want to throw him in there against lefties. Ernie Clement, you prefer to, honestly, at this point, you might have him in to start the year every single day in the lineup. But for a guy like David Schneider, you probably prefer to have him against lefties, even though for some reason this year he was a little bit better against righties. But John Schneider has shown that he likes to do this platooning thing. So adding depth and adding that, one other guy to kind of make up for some of another player's weaknesses, that is definitely something that can be beneficial to this team to really build a natural cohesive unit and just have everyone work together and kind of make up for each other's faults.
Yeah, no, I agree. And that's obvious. I mean, you could tell from my little rant that I went on, but it's about balancing guys. It's the toughest thing in all of sport is trying to figure out who is going to have a great season and who is not. And I mean, none of us sit here with a crystal ball and can expect that. And, Mark Shapiro and Ross Atkins both talked in their media availabilities about expecting regression in some guys and finding out where it's going to come and how they can determine who that is. And nobody does it 100% successfully. Even with expecting guys to have bounce back years, I don't think anybody expected the George Springer year that we got from him. So you're going to have guys that pop off the page. You're going to have guys that falter. It's just how you manage that and how you prepare for that in the offseason. But Carter, just before we talk about who's coming back, who do you want back, who are you okay with letting go, we got to talk a little bit about the pitching side as well. The starting pitchers right now, as it stands, Kevin Gausman, Trey Savage, Jose Berrios, Shane Bieber, Eric Lauer, and you have also guys like Ricky Tiedemann, Bowden Francis, a whole slew of guys coming up, Jake Bloss from the minors that could have a potential impact on this team. And then Carter in the bullpen as well, Jeff Hoffman, Jimmy Garcia, Louis Varland, Brayden Fisher, Brennan Little, Tommy Nance, Mason Fluharty, Yariel Rodriguez. So obviously, you do lose a couple guys there if as it stands right now. But Carter, I think we both understand the fact that if this team is probably looking for one more very solid starting pitcher that is a long-term deal, so that next year when a couple guys come off the books, Shane Bieber, Kevin Gausman, that they have some opportunity there to at least have somebody locked down. Because right now, that's great that you're planning for this year, but you also have to plan for the future. And that was something I think we hammered hard on last week, is that, yes, you have to plan and try to take advantage of right now for sure, but you have Vladdy for 14 years here. And you want to capitalize on all of those years. And if you can keep running this over, you have to be planning for the future as well as right now. So that's going to be an interesting slot that happens there. Obviously, that would push Eric Lauer out of this starting rotation. But I think, again, with Mark Shapiro and Ross Atkins talking in their media availability, it's always about getting better every single year. It's not about, you can't bring everybody back and expect to be a better baseball team. You have to be willing to roll the dice and add and subtract certain pieces to make that work. So I definitely think they need to add it to starting pitching role, Carter, and definitely the bullpen as well. And from what Ross Atkins and Mark Shapiro both said about Jeff Hoffman and him not having that closing role for sure locked down, I think those are two spots that they are going to go out and try to get major pieces, one starter and one very, very solid reliever that they can bank on, night in and night out.
Yeah, I just wanted to throw in Nick Sandlin as another option out of the bullpen. You just forgot about him as well. And then Paxton Schultz, I think a little bit underrated. Maybe not a guy that I want initially in the bullpen, but if there's some injuries, which will happen, unfortunately, in baseball, not necessarily a guy that I would be opposed to coming out of the bullpen. But you're completely right. When you look at this year, Ross Atkins said himself, this is a better free agent class in terms of starting pitching than the average year. And you look at Kevin Gausman coming off the book. Shane Bieber, again, the guy with the signed a 1-year deal, probably going to be, well, we'll see. Again, I'm not going to speculate right now. We have to see what Shane Bieber does. But again, there is still the option that he does not re-sign with the Toronto Blue Jays. Jose Berrios, player option at the end of 2026. He could be gone as well. It really depends on what he wants to do. So Trey Savage, really the only guy in that starting rotation, maybe Eric Lauer, if you want to throw him in there too, that has some sustainability. I was thinking about today, imagine if Alek Manoah panned out. Imagine we had Alek Manoah in his rotation as well. I don't know if they even go out and sign another starting pitcher. But again, that feels like an eternity ago. And you're completely right about the bullpen. That's going to be a fan favorite, especially with the way the World Series ended, unfortunately. Nobody's going to want Jeff Hoffman back in that. Even the bullpen, some people don't even want him, which is absolutely crazy. But I do understand why people don't want him in that closing role. Give 15 home runs during the year. Just a lot. That's too many for a closing pitcher, especially when you have a defense as good as the Toronto Blue Jays. But that is one thing that Ross Atkins and the Toronto Blue Jays have focused on for a very long time. It's been run prevention. So if you look at it offensively, you're going to need a guy that's going to be good defensively and probably can play multiple positions. I know at the trade deadline, we were talking about Harrison Bader. I'm not going to throw out too many other names right now because we'll get into that as the offseason progresses. But Harrison Bader would be a guy that makes sense for the Toronto Blue Jays, providing them depth and a guy that you can play literally anywhere in the outfield, and he will be providing you above average defense. Same thing goes to the pitching. We've seen throughout free agency in the previous years that Ross Atkins will go out and will spend money with starting pitchers, whether it's Kevin Gausman, Jose Berrios, Chris Bassitt, Max Scherzer. We've seen those very recently and then in the past as well. So I would not be surprised if he goes out in a good market for starting pitching and is aggressive and tries to get one of those top guys, whether it's a Zach Gallen, whether it's a Michael King. Again, Dylan Cease will continue to go down the list as the year progresses. But that is where the focal point is going to be. Number one is probably going to be Bichette. That's obvious. And then outside of Bichette, it's going to be the pitching. It's going to be the starters. It's going to be the bullpen, providing some depth for this rotation. Another thing that they might flirt with, again, I know you're opposed to this. I'm still kind of working it out. Is Louis Varland turning him into a starter. Again, the velocity goes down a little bit. He's the secondaries. I'm not sure how well that they will transform into that starting pitching role. I know that he has been working on that knuckle curve. He has been working on a lot of those secondaries, but I think there is still some more work to do before you wanted to turn Louis Varland into a starter. And again, with the market, why wouldn't you want to go out and get an already established starter, especially with what Louis Varland did for you down the stretch in the bullpen? So when you have something that worked out for you, I don't necessarily like, messing around with that. And then there's Yariel Rodriguez, who, again, maybe not as prolific or like this, massive name that everyone's going to get excited about, but had a pretty down end of the year. Again, he showed flashes. In May, he was one of the best relievers in this entire bullpen. So how does he fit in that rotation as well? Again, it's more so that, like, on that end, you'll look at the depth. You'll look at some guys like the Eric Lauer signing the minor league contracts. But I'm looking for that big fish. And I think a lot of people, the Toronto Blue Jays fans, are going to be looking for that big fish as well, whether it is in the starting rotation, the bullpen, or ideally both. And I think to end this off, if there was only going to be one, if it was going to be an ace for your starting rotation or an unbelievable closer like a Robert Suarez, someone that can lock you down games, which one would you prefer?
To be honest, Carter, I think it's got to be the closer for me. And there's only one reason for that is that I think you can go out at a trade deadline and pick up a guy like you did with Shane Bieber going into a postseason. And that's sort of, I know that's so far in advance, 100% it is. But I think for right now in winning games, a closer will prove more beneficial night in, night out than a starter where you do have guys like Bowden Francis, who knows what he's going to turn into, and Eric Lauer, who you saw what he did in 2025. Again, probably some regression coming there, but you do have an option, and him as your fifth starter, at least until you get to the trade deadline. I think that's okay to think about. So is that sort of where you're on as well?
See, I think this team needs a closing pitcher more, but in terms of like acquiring one of these pieces at the trade deadline, it's a whole lot easier to acquire a bullpen arm, whether they're,
Sure.
mediocre or really, really good compared to like that top caliber starting pitcher. This Shane Bieber situation was very unique. You don't really see it too often. The guy that has been a previous Cy Young, kind of just becoming ready at the perfect time for your playoff run. So I think in terms of like what would be easier at the trade deadline, it'd probably be more beneficial if they went out and signed that top tier ace starting pitcher. And then, you don't have to give up as many assets with bullpen arms. And there's so much volatility with bullpen arms. Again, you can have one, look at Devin Williams, for example, unbelievable for 3 straight years. Even Jeff Hoffman, we can talk about him. Really good 2 years with the Philadelphia Phillies. That's why the Blue Jays signed Jeff Hoffman as the closer. He comes into that closing role, again, not something he's necessarily accustomed to, and has a little bit of a worse year. So with the bullpen, I think there's a lot more uncertainty. It's a lot more unpredictable than the starting rotation is. So in terms of just acquiring at the deadline, like that's where I would be. But in terms of what this team needs right now, and again, at the start of the season, a closer probably would be more beneficial at the end of the day.
Yeah, it's going to be an interesting conversation, and we'll talk names as we get further and further along into this offseason and into free agency here. But Carter, we got to talk about Blue Jays specific here. Who's in, who's out, who do you want back, who don't you, who's sort of in that middle ground. We'll do all that right after this short break. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. The NBA is back, and there's no better place to get in on the action than FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. Now that there's no baseball, I've turned my attention elsewhere for my sports betting. I've been going a lot in the NFL, a lot on some NHL, a little bit on the CFL here and there. But, the NBA, I've been trying to get back into it. We were just having a conversation with my buddy the other day. He's a big NBA betting guy. And so I was asking him, I'm like, what's going to make me enjoy this game? He goes, dude, just bet the overs and sit there and watch. It's an absolute blast. So that's what I'm going to start doing. Even if you missed the start of a game or want to ride the hot hand, FanDuel has live bets on everything from who will score next to fourth quarter comebacks. Plus, you can even combine your live bets into a same game parlay for a shot at a bigger payout. It keeps every game exciting, especially when your team's making that late push. Yeah, he was another big guy for the second half overs. He likes those as well. Right now, FanDuel is giving new customers $300 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. So head to FanDuel.com to sign up today and play your game with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. Today's episode also brought to you by Doer. And as you guys are listening to this, my package has probably come in. I was scheduled to come in Monday morning, so I'm sitting here waiting for it. I'm excited. I'm not a big shopper. I don't go out and, buy jeans too often, but I've heard great reviews about these. There's so many beneficial things. It combines classic jean wear style and the kind of comfort and performance you get from athletic wear. So it's sort of like the best of both worlds. And that I like. I don't want to be stiff and rigid if I'm wearing pants like to work or, out to a function. I don't like that. So Doer does a great job of sort of mixing both. Designed to look great and stay comfortable all day, no matter what you're doing. Doer are pioneers of blending technology innovation with everyday clothing. They invented the original performance denim. Simply put, Doer makes the world's most comfortable pants without having to sacrifice style. And you can check out Doer in-store here in Toronto. It's at 44 Ossington Ave. Pick up a pair for yourself or as an amazing holiday gift. Mention our promo code Locked On Toronto in store to get 15% off your first order, or check them out online at duer.ca/Locked On Toronto for 15% off. That's doer.ca/Locked On Toronto. So Carter, as we continue on here, we're talking a little bit about certain guys in, certain guys out for this Toronto Blue Jays team this year. Why don't you give us the quick rundown, and I'll then you can toss it back over to me, and I'll tell you where I think everybody's not necessarily going to go, but will they stay in Toronto?
All right, so now there is 6 free agents for the Toronto Blue Jays. We were going to talk about 7 when we were, thinking about making this episode, but Shane Bieber made it a little bit easier on us, and that was going to be one of the harder ones that we were going to have to decide on. So the 6 free agents in no particular order of the ones I want the most back compared to the least. We'll go into that as this episode progresses. But you have Max Scherzer, you have Bichette, you're going to have Chris Bassitt, IKF, Ty France, and Sir Anthony Gimenez. So you have a little bit of, differences in terms of skill, in terms of, expectation of what they would provide for your team. So I think I'm just going to get this out of the way. There's a couple guys that I don't think the Blue Jays are going to re-sign. I think a lot of people will be on the same page. I'll just start with the 2 of them. Ty France, IKF, very low chance that these 2 are going to come back to the Toronto Blue Jays. You probably agree, but I'll throw it over to you for some of the other guys that maybe a little bit of tougher decisions.
Yeah, for sure. No, I 100% agree with you. Ty France, there's just no advantage there right now. He's a bench bat for you. That's really it, because Vladimir Guerrero Jr. will play first base almost every single day. And that's it. He's, great. He's got his gold glove. That's fantastic. Good for Ty France. But yeah, that's where he is. IKF, to me, there's so many platoon players here, and this guy just isn't in the mix. I'd rather take a Davis Schneider, Ernie Clement, and Addison Barger 100 times over 100 over IKF. And, it's a guy that you wanted to play amazing defensively, really had some lapses this year, and I think I would have rather traded him in for a Davis Schneider to play there, or an Ernie Clement in some situations, and maybe it would have been the same defense, and you would have got some offensive upside. So wasn't my favorite there. Sir Anthony Dominguez, Carter, for me, will not return. I don't think there's any question there. I don't think they were in love with him. I think he did give you some really good outings, but the walk percentage and it is just too high for this team. And they want guys that can be in the strike zone and be dominant. And I just think he could put you in some bad situations, and they recognize that. Carter, to me, one really interesting piece is Chris Bassitt. He said multiple times he wants to come back, but as much as people want him to be in a bullpen role, which I think that'd be awesome, but I just don't see it happening. Bullpen arms are not going to get paid the same as starting pitching. Chris Bassitt wants to be a starter. He wants to be a starting pitcher. And if they bring him back, if they make that move, that's pretty much telling you, here's our starting rotation. We're not going to go sign one of those big fish, maybe for a multiple-year deal that carries over. So Chris Bassitt, as much as I do want him back, and I love Chris Bassitt, he's one of my favorite guys on the team, he just doesn't make a whole lot of sense right now. And that's sad to say, because I know how much he wanted to win in Toronto and with this group of guys. But yeah, just tough for me, Carter. And I think we can both agree that everybody in the realm of Blue Jays land wants Bichette to return. That would be an absolute massive one there, Carter.
Yeah, that's a no-brainer, obviously, with Bichette. Regarding Chris Bassitt, I think this is really going to depend on how late into the offseason that he is available. Like, they're not going to sign Chris Bassitt right away. They're not going to sign Chris Bassitt, honestly, in December. It's going to be the same kind of idea that we saw with the Juan Soto situation with Shohei Ohtani. Is like the big fish are going to be the focal points. Bichette is going to be the focal point. And then if you miss on Bichette, you're going to have to rebound. You're going to have to take a U-turn and try to decipher what you want to do for the rest of this offseason. I think that's the same way they deal with Chris Bassitt. You go after the big fish, you try to get that top tier caliber guy. And if you don't do that, that doesn't end up happening. I think they will go to Chris Bassitt. They will have talks with Chris Bassitt. I bet you they're in talks right now with Chris Bassitt. But I completely agree with you. You sign Chris Bassitt, he's not going to sign for a bullpen contract. This is a guy that was still very productive, pitched 170 innings for you with an under 4 ERA throughout last season. This is a guy that can still log you innings. It's a workhorse. This is an inning eater. Chris Bassitt is not going to give in and kind of give up on himself, unless somehow in some realm he thinks that, him being out of the bullpen is going to be the saving grace for the Toronto Blue Jays. But I think he believes, and I also believe, that if he comes back to the Toronto Blue Jays, he would be way more beneficial out of that starting rotation rather than in the bullpen. Again, when you get to the playoffs, we've seen that he will go. He's okay with, transversing. He's okay with going into different roles, whether that is the bullpen, whether that's an opener. You can throw Chris Bassitt anywhere. You could probably throw him in center field, and he would be fine. With Sir Anthony Dominguez, again, the walk rate was just too prolific in the playoffs specifically. Like, you signed Sir Anthony Dominguez for the playoffs, and he walked 11 in 2025 in that playoff stretch. Just had too much traffic on the bases. And a guy that I just don't think really embraced like the culture of the Toronto Blue Jays. Like, it didn't seem like, again, we heard all this clubhouse stuff. For me, I don't know about this. And again, I'm just speculating. I don't think Sir Anthony Dominguez was one of those guys that was like really It was a focal point to that clubhouse and the nature of that clubhouse. So I wouldn't be opposed to bringing back Anthony Dominguez, but again, it would have to be on a specific contract. You'd probably have to get him for, I don't know, $5.5, $6 million. I don't know if Anthony Dominguez is going to be willing to do that. This was a guy that was very good down the stretch of the regular season. But I think where the Toronto Blue Jays are going to turn to with this bullpen is I think they're going to go down to the Jeff Hoffman route. They're going to pay one more guy this offseason. But I don't know if it's going to be an Edwin Diaz or Robert Torres, one of those top of the line guys necessarily. I wouldn't be opposed to it whatsoever. But I think
hearing
that's
those trumpets come out, Rogers
that
Center
would be pretty electric. I mean, I'll sign me up for that. I don't care how much it costs. Again, it's not my money, but we know for sure that the Toronto Blue Jays will absolutely be aggressive. And I'm hoping for a little bit of an upgrade from Anthony Dominguez. Not necessarily with the stuff. Like, stuff's not the problem, but if you're going to walk that many people, you got to be throwing 100. I'm sorry. You just have to be throwing 100 consistently.
Yeah, no, I don't think that's a bad take at all, Carter. We're going to talk way more as this offseason progresses about Bo Bichette and what that contract will be. It'll probably be like a Bo Bichette focused episode of what are the options, what's the contract looking like. We've heard rumblings, but we will give you guys all of that as sort of this offseason progresses here. But Carter, there was a big sports gambling, allegations now they're being heard. I'll let you sort of break down the story when we come back, but it's massive and it has massive.
I got one more thing quickly about Max Scherzer. I think I got the way Max Scherzer fits into the Toronto Blue Jays lineup. I'm sure you're going to love this one.
Okay.
He said he doesn't want to retire, but Max Scherzer's not going to want to sign for, under $10 million. You saw what he did in the playoffs. He's going to want a big contract. I don't think that any team is going to want to sign him for that contract just due to him not really being available throughout the regular season. So this is what's going to happen. He's not going to sign with any team until the playoffs. Max Scherzer returns to the Toronto Blue Jays for another playoff run in 2026.
I don't hate that. Bring the guy back to the playoffs. Let Mad Max eat. I don't hate that at all. That's why, Carter, I think everybody knows where we were on Max Scherzer. I mean, it's tough. His family loved it, and he said he had a great time here. That's awesome to see it from a Hall of Famer. But at the end of the day, you got to make moves to the future, and you can't have 41-year-old Max Scherzer on a $15 million contract. That just can't happen again. As cool as it was, though, for some Blue Jays fans to, probably have that Max Scherzer jersey hanging up in their closet. But Carter, I do want to get into this sports betting allegation. And I want to say something massive in regards to this, because this could set up a big time situation in the future when we return. Today's episode brought to you by Game Time. You guys know how much I love Game Time. It's my only place that I go to get tickets. An NFL season, obviously, in full swing. And honestly, there's nothing better than being at the stadium surrounded by fans cheering on your team. But let's be honest, getting tickets can be a hassle between queues, login screens, and the prices jumping at the checkout. It's frustrating. That's why I use Game Time, the app that gives the advantage back to fans. Game Time is fast, easy, and backed by the Game Time guarantee. You'll always get 100% authentic tickets delivered on time at the best price. Plus, all the fees are included, so the price you see is the price you pay. I'd say this story all the time. I had my cousin reach out to me. He goes, "Hey, what's the app you use to get tickets?" And he went on. He used the Locked On MLB code. He got his $20 off on his first purchase, and he has not looked back. It's the only place now that he goes to get tickets, so I highly recommend it. Download the Game Time app. Create an account and use code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, that's promo code LOCKEDON MLB for $20 off. Swipe, tap, ticket, go. Download Game Time today. So, Carter, a massive sports betting story that has come out just yesterday, actually. And, me and you, we've had many conversations in regards to this, whether it was on the podcast or sitting on our couch with our buddies. It's come up. So I'll let you do a quick overview before I get into what I have to say.
Yeah, the big headliner, Brayden Newasco embezzling money from FanDuel to help his betting addiction. Not quite this one on this podcast, but this will be about Luis Ortiz and Emmanuel Clase. Crazy stuff throughout this entire season. Again, Emmanuel Clase being one of the best closers in all of baseball. Unbelievable. So I'll just get into it. So breaking news, this is from Jeff Passan, the Cleveland Guardians pitcher. Emmanuel Clase and Luis Ortiz have been indicted by prosecutors after a betting scheme linked to rigging which pitches were thrown in games. Again, that's for Jeff Passan. Luis Ortiz was arrested in Boston earlier today. This is Sunday as we're recording this, and Clase has not yet been arrested. They will both face up to 65 years in prison if convicted on all charges. Emmanuel Clase's activity began in May 2023. Luis Ortiz joined the operation in June of 2025. this is the amount of money that these guys made, the people that they were conspiring with and betting on Clase and Ortiz to throw just horrific pitches. Again, you've probably seen the clips of some of the balls that these guys were throwing. Again, it was pretty obvious now when you look back at it in retrospect. But Clase's conspirator bettors were going to win at least $400,000 in fraudulent wagers, and Ortiz, their conspirators, were supposed to, or they were going to win, and they did win at least $60,000 in fraudulent wagers. 400,000 and 60,000. When these guys, especially Emmanuel Clase, is making millions of dollars to pitch for the Cleveland Guardians. And just one more thing again from Chris, not Chris. I'm on Chris Bassitt right now. My mind's not working too well, unfortunately. Chris Bassitt's not involved in this betting scheme. Thank God for the Toronto Blue Jays. But again, from Jeff Passan, prosecutors allege that Luis Ortiz was paid $5,000 for throwing an intentional ball on June 15th, and Emmanuel Clase was given $5,000 for facilitating it. They did it again, according to the indictment. On June 27th, the payment for each pitch was $7,000 apiece. I get like the reason why it's like these dollar figures because they're trying to remain under the radar, but I will never understand why these guys that are making multi-millions of dollars are risking their careers for betting on pitches and betting on games. Makes no sense to me whatsoever.
And you know what? There's going to be a lot of people that are going to paint gambling and sports betting as the problem here. I'm sorry. No, that's not the issue. The issue is these guys are making millions of dollars and making stupid mistakes. This is a player-specific problem and not a gambling problem in totality. As much as people want to paint it that way, it's not. These players are doing this and they deserve the punishment that is coming to them. You play in a sport that you are betting on. You can go bet on anything else you want. You can go bet on the NBA, have some fun, but don't bet on the games you're involved in. It's simple as that. These guys are being scumbags and they deserve it. And listen, I'm a big sports gambler. I enjoy it a lot. I think it makes games more fun that I'm really not into. Like basketball, it's my way of getting back into basketball. That's great. I don't play on the teams. I can have fun and do this. I can bet on whatever I want to bet on. If you're playing in the sport, do not bet on the sport. That's it. It should be easy enough. The rules have been written for ages. You see that people don't get into the Hall of Fame because of it. Don't bet on the sport you play in. It's easy enough. It's it. Like, I don't know, Carter. It's frustrating because it's like, how do you just not know better? Like, why do you need $5,000? Like, I'm asking that. Like, I want to know, what was that $5,000 going to go towards that he needed it that badly?
Well, I mean, I could use $5,000 for a lot of things.
Well,
we
got to pay rent.
Clase. I will say the prison baseball league is going to go crazy. The baseball version of the longest yard, Emmanuel Clase, like Ortiz, like, let's do it. Imagine somehow this is a real thing and they're just, going up to the plate and you see Emmanuel Clase, you're doing 25 years hard time and you're trying to enjoy yourself. And then you see the Clase fastball whiz by you at 101. I mean, he's going to have to learn the prison talk, unfortunately, because they will be convicted. And like you said, they should be convicted. You can bet on literally anything, and you're throwing pitches in a major league game that other people are betting on. And again, other people are trying to enjoy. Like the amount of emotions that we went through with the Toronto Blue Jays season. Imagine like Trey Savage was betting on himself to throw balls or something like that. Like I would absolutely lose my mind.
Yeah, no, 100%. As always, guys, we appreciate you listening and tuning into all the episodes. We'll be back with you 5 days a week, Monday to Friday. We'll have a bunch of, obviously, the offseason free agency coverage. That's where the focus is going to be, but no, we're also going to look ahead quite a bit to the Toronto Blue Jays 2026 futures as this continues on, obviously, through this offseason. So, we appreciate it as always. Hit the subscribe button, comment down below. We love hearing from all of you, and we've appreciated all the support, and we're going to be here, I don't know, Carter, the rest of our lives to give you guys episodes. So here we are. Thanks a bunch, and we'll talk to you guys tomorrow.